Something ancient still watches from the Irish mist. We are about to unmask the Pooka, a shape-shifting trickster whose true nature has been a secret for centuries. By the end of this, you will understand not just a myth, but a powerful force that reflects our own untamed spirit. We will investigate why a creature known to terrify travelers could also offer profound wisdom, and what its connection to the harvest reveals about our relationship with the wild. What part of your own nature do you think remains wild and untamed? Its name alone whispers of its true essence, Pooka, a word flowing from the ancient Old Irish term puka, which simply means spirit or ghost. This is not a name describing a monster, but a fundamental state of being, an entity composed of the very stuff of the unseen world. To understand this trickster, we must journey back to a time before stone churches dotted the Irish landscape, to the pagan Celtic world, where every hill and stream held a life of its own. The Pooka did not simply appear in this world, it was born from it, a personification of the raw, untamed spirit of the land itself. Some scholars trace threads of its story even further, seeing echoes in the Norse land spirits who guarded homesteads or a clear kinship with the Welsh PWC, a similar shape-shifting being. This suggests a being whose roots are as deep and widespread as the ancient oak forests of Europe, but the Pooka we know today was truly forged in the fire of cultural change. As new beliefs washed over Ireland, the old gods and spirits did not simply vanish, they transformed. The Pooka, a creature of pure pagan wildness, found itself navigating a new world where its nature had to adapt, becoming more ambiguous, more elusive. It became a master of the threshold, not just of physical places like crossroads or the last furrow of a plowed field, but of the spiritual boundary between the ancient wilderness and the new order. It exists in that breathless moment between one world and the next, forever reminding us of what lies just beyond the edge of the familiar. This shape-shifting is the very heart of its power, a fluid identity that defies any single description. Most often and most terrifyingly, the Pooka chooses the form of a magnificent black horse. This is no ordinary animal. It is a creature of impossible beauty and dread, its coat darker than a moonless midnight, its eyes burning with an internal golden fire. Its mane and tail flow like living shadow, and it moves with a silence that belies its great size. This form is a perfect expression of its nature. The horse in ancient Ireland was a symbol of strength, sovereignty, and untamed freedom, but the Pooka's equine guise twists this nobility into something otherworldly and dangerous. It is the wilderness given flesh and muscle, a force that cannot be broken or bridled. When a lone traveler on a dark road sees this beast materialize from the mist, the fear they feel is not merely of a wild animal. It is the primal terror of confronting the raw, animate spirit of the land itself, a power that recognizes no human master. The awe is just as potent, for its terrible beauty is undeniable, a glimpse into a world where nature is still supremely powerful and utterly wild. This form is essential to its most famous interaction, a terrifying midnight ride. The Pooka does not simply attack. It may calmly approach, its fiery eyes holding the traveler in a trance and compel them to mount its back. What follows is a gallop beyond human comprehension, a journey across impossible landscapes, over mountains and seas in a single night. It is an experience that shatters a person's understanding of reality, leaving them shaken but alive, often deposited back at their home with a cryptic warning or a strange new perspective on their life. The horse form is not a random disguise, it is the very instrument of its trickster philosophy, a vehicle for delivering both terror and unexpected wisdom. Yet the black horse is but one mask in a vast and shifting wardrobe. The Pooka's true mastery of transformation is revealed in the sheer variety of its other forms, each one a different facet of its chaotic personality. When it takes the shape of a great eagle, the creature soars high above the mortal world. From that vantage point, it is no longer a trickster of the road, but a being of lofty perspective. It observes the tiny movements of humanity below with an ancient, detached intelligence. This form symbolizes a terrifying kind of wisdom, a reminder that our most secret struggles are seen from a grand, impersonal scale. The eagle's cry is not a threat, but an omen, a call to look up from our petty concerns and consider the vast, indifferent patterns of the world. Then there is the goat, a form that stomps and bleats with a very different energy. The goat is an animal deeply rooted in pagan symbolism, a creature of raw fertility, untamed landscapes, and headstrong defiance. When the pooka appears as a goat, it embodies a stubborn, earthy power. It might knock over a farmer's pail, not out of malice, but as a challenge to his order, a playful jab from the wild at the structures of domestic life. Its presence is a direct link to the oldest spirits of the land, those who governed the harvest and the flock long before any saint set foot on Irish soil. In its stubborn glare, we see nature's refusal to be entirely controlled. A far more subtle, yet equally potent, guise is that of the rabbit. This seems a gentle form, a symbol of abundance and quick reproduction. But in the paws of the pooka, the rabbit becomes a master of trickery. It leads hunters on a frantic, futile chase through brambles and burrows, only to vanish at the last moment. This is the pooka demonstrating that true power is not always about terrifying strength, but about cleverness and misdirection. The rabbit reminds us that the wild survives not just by force, but by wit and an intimate knowledge of its own domain. Its sudden disappearance is a lesson in humility for anyone who believes they can easily conquer the natural world. Perhaps the most chilling transformation, however, is into a monstrous, shadowy dog. The hound is a creature of deep duality in Celtic lore, a symbol of loyal guardianship, but also a stark omen of death. When the pooka wears this form, it stands at the threshold between the living world and what lies beyond. It might be seen guarding a lonely crossroads or a forgotten burial mound, its eyes glowing like embers in the dark. This is not the playful trickster, but the solemn watcher. Its silent presence speaks of endings and transitions, a reminder that the wild, untamed spirit of the world also holds the keys to its final mysteries. Through these many forms, the pooka reveals itself not as a single monster, but as a multifaceted force of nature itself, capable of delivering a playful nip, a soaring insight, or a cold, sobering truth. But the pooka's most personal confrontation occurs when it wears a face almost like our own. Stepping beyond its animal guises, it sometimes manifests in a humanoid shape, a form that is profoundly disquieting. This is not a handsome fairy prince from a storybook. It is more often a grotesque, hairy man, his form twisted with animalistic features, perhaps the ears of a goat or the glowing eyes of a wolf. Or it may appear as a shadowy, featureless figure, a silhouette that moves with an impossible fluidity. These forms trigger a deep, instinctual fear known as the uncanny valley. We are faced with something that is almost human, yet clearly is not, and our minds recoil from that subtle, horrifying wrongness. It is the terror of the other, the thing that walks like a man but belongs to the wild, ancient dark. This specific terror is the pooka's tool. It uses this unsettling visage to command absolute attention, to ensure its message is not ignored. When the pooka appears in this way, it is often to deliver a prophecy or a severe warning. A farmer might encounter the hairy man at the edge of his field, who then speaks in a rasping voice of a coming storm that will ruin the harvest. A traveler lost in the bog may see the featureless shadow standing silently, pointing a long, dark finger toward the only safe path home. The message is always dire, and it is always true. The fear inspired by its appearance is what gives the warning its weight, forcing the listener to shed their disbelief and act. This is the pooka at its most complex, a terrifying messenger whose very form is a lesson in humility. It tells us that wisdom does not always come in a pleasing package, and that the most crucial truths we must hear may be delivered by a voice from the shadows we most fear to face. You will not find the pooka just anywhere. It is a creature of specific geographies, both physical and spiritual. Its true domain is rural Ireland, a land where ancient stones still whisper and the mist holds memories. It haunts the lonely places, the forgotten margins where the modern world has not yet laid its heavy hand. Look for it among ancient ruins, where crumbling walls are all that remain of old kingdoms. Here the Pooka walks as a guardian of what was, a sentinel for stories that have long since faded from living memory. It prowls the lonely country lanes that twist between sleeping villages, roads where a traveler's footsteps are the only sound for miles. This is where its famous ride most often begins, in that isolating silence between one community and the next. You might glimpse it in the misty bogs, those treacherous, watery landscapes that seem to belong to another time. The bog does not give up its secrets easily, and the Pooka is one of its greatest. A shape-shifting will-o'-the wisp leading the arrogant to a muddy end or the humble to a hidden truth. And it favors the high, lonely hilltops, places where the wind speaks a language older than words. From these vantage points it surveys its kingdom, a realm of untamed nature and ancient magic. But its presence is strongest not just in a place, but in a time. The Pooka is a master of the threshold, and so it is most powerful during the day's own thresholds, the transitional hours of dusk and dawn. This is the liminal space between day and night, when light and shadow blend and the world holds its breath. In that hazy, uncertain light, the boundaries of reality grow soft, and a black horse with eyes of fire can step from the realm of story into our own. Yet there is one night of the year when its power is absolute, when the veil between our world and the other world becomes as thin as a spider's silk. This is Samhain, the Celtic New Year, marked on what we now call Halloween. Samhain was not just a change on the calendar, it was a profound spiritual event. It was the moment when the dead were believed to walk among the living, and when the spirits of the wild, like the Pooka, could move with complete freedom. On this night, the Pooka is no longer just a potential encounter, it is an active, pervasive force. Its traditional role at Samhain was to stride across the countryside, blowing on the stalks of trampled corn. With its breath, it would bless the remaining crops that had been left untouched, a final act from the wild to ensure the community's survival through the dark winter. This single act captures its entire contradictory nature. It is a terrifying trickster who also brings a vital blessing, a creature of chaos that ultimately serves the balance of the natural world. To know where the Pooka walks is to understand that it is always standing at the border, in the space between the known and the unknown, waiting for the moment when the walls between worlds grow thin. This duality is the very essence of the Pooka, a creature that defies any simple label of good or evil. It is the wild, untamed heart of nature given a voice and a will, and nature is never just one thing. It can be both the life-giving sun and the destructive storm, and so too can the Pooka. On one hand, its actions can feel purely malevolent, a chaotic force of mischief and fear. A traveler, confident in their knowledge of a local path, might suddenly find themselves hopelessly lost, the familiar landmarks twisted into strange, menacing shapes by the Pooka's influence. A farmer who has spent months tending his fields could wake to find his crops trampled into the mud, not by a storm or a herd of animals, but by a single set of phantom hoofprints. This is the Pooka as a spirit of pure anarchy, challenging human order and reminding everyone that all our plans are built on foundations that can be swept away in a single, chaotic night. It embodies the fear of the unknown that lurks just beyond the firelight, the capricious force that the ancient Celts knew could bring ruin as easily as rain. Yet to see only this side is to misunderstand the creature completely, for the very same entity can, without warning, become a source of profound wisdom and unexpected protection. There are stories of the Pooka appearing to a family in a time of great need, its unsettling form delivering a cryptic message that, when understood, saves them from a hidden danger, like a failing roof beam or a poisoned well. It might guide a lost child through a treacherous bog, a shadowy rabbit hopping just ahead, always visible, leading them safely home. This benevolent side is not a separate personality, but another facet of its wild nature. The Pooka does not operate on a human sense of morality, rewarding the good and punishing the wicked. Instead, it acts as a force of natural balance. Its tricks often humble the arrogant, while its aid sometimes elevates the humble. Its blessings, like the one bestowed upon the Samhain crops, are not given out of kindness, but out of a deeper, instinctual drive to maintain the health of the land it personifies. The ancient Celts did not simply fear this capricious power, they revered it, because they understood that the wild world was not their enemy, but a powerful, unpredictable partner. To encounter the Pooka was to stand face to face with that raw, untamable reality. So, was it a guide or a trickster? The only true answer is that it was both, a reflection of nature's own beautiful and terrifying indifference. One tale whispered for generations tells of a proud farmer from County Down. This man was known for his stubbornness and his belief that his will alone controlled his fate. One evening, as dusk settled, he was walking his land when a magnificent black horse emerged from the fog. Its eyes held him in a golden trance, and a voice that was not a voice commanded him to mount. The farmer found himself clinging to the creature's back as it launched into a gallop that defied the wind. They raced over the very tops of the mountains, their hooves barely touching the heather, and soared across the churning sea, salt spray stinging his face. The farmer saw his entire life from that impossible height, his farm a tiny patch, his worries insignificant specks. Just as dawn broke, the Pooka deposited him, shaken and breathless, right at his own doorstep. He was unharmed, but he was forever changed. His pride had been shattered by the sheer scale of the world, replaced with a deep and lasting humility. He never spoke of the ride again, but from that day forward, he treated his land and his neighbors with a newfound reverence, understanding his small but sacred place within a much grander design. This story is the Pooka as the ultimate teacher, using terror not to harm, but to enlighten, to scrub away the grime of arrogance and reveal a clearer truth. Another famous encounter explains why, in some parts of Ireland, it is said you should never eat blackberries after Samhain. The story goes that the Pooka, in its annual crossing of the land on that sacred night, would deliberately spit or trample on every blackberry bush it passed. On the surface, this seems like pure spite, a wanton spoiling of a sweet, wild fruit, but the lesson is one of natural balance and protective wisdom. The old folk knew that the damp, chill weather following Samhain could cause the late hanging berries to mold or ferment. By rendering them inedible through its alleged defilement, the Pooka was actually preventing children or foragers from eating spoiled fruit and falling ill. It became the scapegoat for a practical, life-saving rule, its fearsome reputation ensuring the warning was heeded for centuries. Here, the trickster enforces a necessary boundary, its monstrous act masking a deeper, almost parental care for the community it is so often said to torment. Then there is the tale of a lazy, careless miller. This man was known for cheating his neighbors, giving them back less flour than he was owed. One night, the Pooka visited his mill not as a horse, but as a grotesque, hairy man. It did not threaten him. Instead, it set to work with a furious, supernatural energy, cleaning the mill from top to bottom, repairing the worn grinding stones, and organizing the sacks of grain with impossible speed. By morning, the mill was in perfect order, but the Pooka had left a single, massive footprint in a pile of flour. The message was unmistakable. The miller understood that his sloth and deceit had been witnessed by a power far greater than the village priest or his neighbors. He was so shamed by this otherworldly intervention that he reformed his ways completely, becoming the most honest and diligent miller in the county. In this story, the Pooka acts as a moral enforcer, using its power not for a wild ride, but for a quiet, devastating lesson in integrity. These stories are not just ghost tales. They are the ancient code of the countryside, written not on paper, but in the shape of a phantom horse and the memory of spoiled fruit. They show a creature deeply woven into the fabric of life, teaching respect for the land, humility in the face of nature's power, and the importance of community ethics. The fear it inspires is the vehicle for a wisdom that is as practical as it is profound. Its voice, when it chose to speak, was said to carry the weight of the future itself. The Pooka was far more than a mischievous spirit. It was also a seer, a harbinger whose words and very presence were read as profound omens. When this shape-shifter appeared in its more humanoid guises, the grotesque hairy man or the featureless shadow, it often came not to play a trick, but to deliver a prophecy. These pronouncements were never comforting. They were stark, direct, and delivered with an unsettling accuracy that left no room for doubt. A farmer might be told that his finest bull would sicken and die before the next full moon, a prediction that would cruelly come true, forcing the family to prepare for a lean winter. A chieftain could receive a warning that a feud with a neighboring clan would end in fire and blood, a fate that would unfold exactly as described. These prophecies were not about grand, world-changing events, but about the intimate futures of families and the land they depended on. The Pooka saw the fragile threads of destiny and did not hesitate to reveal where they would snap. Its knowledge was absolute, drawn from its ancient connection to the cycles of life, death, and the soil itself. To receive such a prophecy was to be handed a terrible burden, a certainty of coming sorrow that could not be avoided, only endured. Yet even in this, there was a twisted form of mercy. The warning, however grim, allowed for preparation, for putting one's affairs in order, for steeling one's heart against the inevitable blow. The Pooka's words forced a confrontation with fate, stripping away the comforting illusion of control and replacing it with a sobering, if dreadful, clarity. But a prophecy did not always require speech. The simple act of seeing the Pooka was, in itself, considered a powerful omen. Its appearance was a rupture in the ordinary, a sign that the veil between worlds had been pulled aside and that significant change was coming. The nature of the omen depended entirely on the context of the encounter. For a community suffering from a blight on their crops, the sight of the Pooka in its eagle form, circling high above, might be interpreted as a sign that the hardship would soon pass, that a broader perspective was needed. For a person at a crossroads in their life, lost and uncertain, glimpsing the shadowy dog at a lonely junction could be a stark message that a difficult decision could no longer be postponed, that one path was closing forever. The most feared omen, however, was a direct and lingering gaze from the Pooka's fiery eyes. If the creature fixed its stare upon a specific person or household, it was widely believed to signal impending doom, a calamity that would befall that individual or their family. This transformed every potential encounter from a simple ghost story into a moment of portentous significance. A traveler hearing a strange sound in the hedgerow at dusk was not just afraid of a wild animal or a prankster. They were afraid of receiving a message from the future, a glimpse of a destiny they might not wish to see. This belief wove the Pooka into the very fabric of daily life, not as a distant myth, but as an active participant in the unfolding drama of existence. Its presence was a constant reminder that the world was alive with meaning, and that the wild, untamed spirit of the land was always watching, always speaking, for those who knew how to listen. This deep connection to prophecy and fate finds its most practical expression in the rhythm of the harvest itself. The Pooka was not a distant observer of the farming year, but an active participant whose favor was essential for survival. The most enduring tradition born from this belief was the practice of leaving the Pooka's share. When the final sheaves of grain were cut and the last potatoes were pulled from the earth, no farmer would ever dare to take everything. A small portion of the crop was deliberately left in the field, a dedicated offering to the shape-shifting spirit of the land. This was not seen as a waste, but as a vital transaction, a necessary payment for the land's continued generosity. They called this the Pooka's share, a tithe paid not to a church but to the wild, To ignore this custom was to invite disaster. A farmer who greedily took every last kernel might find his stored grain ravaged by a sudden plague of rats, or his prize cow would go dry, or a freak hailstorm would destroy his fields the following spring. The Pooka would claim its share one way or another, and it was far wiser to give it willingly than to have it taken by force through misfortune. This act transformed the relationship from one of pure fear into one of mutual, if cautious, respect. It was a recognition that humanity's efforts were only one part of the equation, that the fertility of the soil itself was a wild, animate force personified by the Pooka. By offering this gift, the farmers were acknowledging their partnership with the untamed world, a partnership that required reciprocity. The ritual was a profound statement of humility, an admission that their survival depended on maintaining a good relationship with the very spirit that could also bring chaos. This was not worship in a formal sense, but a deeply rooted folk practice that understood the land as a living entity with its own will, an entity that demanded acknowledgement. The Pooka's share cemented a symbiotic bond between the community and the creature, a yearly reminder that they were not conquerors of the landscape, but tenants living by the grace of a powerful and capricious landlord. The act of leaving that last furrow unplowed or that last apple on the tree was a silent prayer for balance, an offering meant to ensure the Pooka's benevolence would manifest as fertility in the coming year, rather than its wrath as a ruined crop. It was a deal struck with the wilderness, one that sustained an entire way of life for generations. Across the rolling hills and misty glens of Ireland, the Pooka's nature was never a single fixed story. It was shaped by the very landscape it haunted, its character and favored forms shifting from one county to the next, a perfect reflection of local geography and community life. In the watery regions of County Kerry and along the many loughs, the Pooka was deeply intertwined with the element of water. Here, it was just as likely to appear as a massive, sinuous eel, its dark body coiling through the deep, peat-stained waters, or as a terrifying water horse. This aquatic version was a far cry from the road-galloping steed of other tales. It would emerge from the depths, its hide dripping with weeds, to lure the unwary onto its back before plunging into the lake, never to be seen again. This was the Pooka as a master of the treacherous bog and the deceptive lough, a spirit that embodied the very real dangers of a landscape where solid ground could give way to drowning depths in a single misstep. The communities living by these waters knew their greatest threats and mysteries came from the deep, and so their Pooka became a creature of the deep. Venture into the rugged, rocky highlands of Connemara or the mountains of County Cork, and the Pooka's preferred mask changed entirely. In these steep, unforgiving terrains, its goat form reigned supreme. A sturdy, agile goat was a creature perfectly suited to this environment, and the Pooka in this guise was a symbol of the land's raw, defiant spirit. It would be seen perched on an impossible crag, its horns silhouetted against the sky, or it would suddenly appear to challenge a shepherd, its stubborn bleat echoing through the valleys. This was not the Pooka of prophetic warnings, but one of immediate physical confrontation with the wild. It represented the constant struggle to carve a life from the stony soil, a reminder that the mountains themselves were alive with a powerful, untamable will. Even its demeanor could change from place to place. In some of the more fertile, settled plains of the Midlands, the Pooka's tricks were often reported as more mischievous than truly menacing. It might content itself with untying cattle or knocking over haystacks, a playful nuisance that tested a farmer's patience rather than threatening his life. Yet in the remote, wind-scoured coastal villages, its presence carried a heavier, more solemn weight. There, it was often seen as a direct omen of coming storms or lost ships, its appearance a portent of the sea's impending fury. This incredible regional diversity reveals a profound truth about the Pooka. It was not a single monster imported from a storybook, but a living part of the folk imagination, a spiritual response to the environment itself. The people did not invent the Pooka and then place it in the landscape. They observed the power of their own land, its unique dangers and its distinct personality, and the Pooka naturally coalesced from that observation. It was the genius loci, the spirit of the place, given a name and 1,000 shifting faces. That same untamed spirit, born from myth and folklore, eventually found itself stepping onto the silver screen. Its journey into modern culture began with one of its most famous and sanitized portrayals in the Disney film Darby O'Gill and the Little People. There, the Pooka appears as a small, shimmering, and purely comical creature, a far cry from the terrifying black horse of the rural lanes. This marked a pivotal shift, the moment a complex, ancient force of nature was repackaged for a mainstream family audience. The transformation did not stop there. In modern fantasy literature and role-playing games, the Pooka is often listed in bestiaries as a type of benign fairy or a simple trickster, its edges sanded down into a predictable, manageable archetype. You might find it in a video game as a whimsical companion that offers minor quests, its form perhaps a cute, fluffy animal with glowing eyes, completely stripped of its capacity for delivering chilling prophecies or profound, life-altering terror. Even paranormal podcasts, while revisiting the old tales, frequently frame the Pooka as just another spooky entity in a catalog of ghosts and goblins, losing the deep cultural context that made it a personification of the land itself. These modern interpretations share a common thread. They consistently simplify the Pooka's deeply contradictory nature. The being that could bless a harvest or shatter a man's pride is flattened into a symbol of mere mischief. Its sacred role as a guardian of natural balance is forgotten, replaced by a focus on its more harmless pranks. This cultural dilution reflects our own modern distance from the wilderness. We have paved over the lonely lanes and drained the mysterious bogs, so the Pooka in our stories has become smaller and safer. We have traded the profound, humbling terror of the genuine article for a comforting, cartoonish shadow. Yet even in this tamed form, a faint echo of its true power remains. That lingering name, that hint of otherworldly magic, still carries a whisper of the ancient wild, a ghost of the untamed force that once commanded both fear and reverence from an entire nation. Perhaps the Pooka's true home is not in the misty hills, but deep within the human mind itself. From a psychological perspective, this shape-shifting trickster can be understood as a powerful symbol of our own shadow self, a concept brought into focus by the psychiatrist Carl Jung. The shadow is not a monster in the closet, but the entire hidden part of our own personality. It contains everything we and our society have taught us to repress: our raw instincts, our chaotic emotions, our wild creativity, and even our latent power, all the parts we deem unacceptable for polite company. We lock this shadow away, trying to present a civilized, orderly face to the world, but the shadow does not disappear. It grows restless in the dark, and it finds ways to make itself known. The Pooka is that eruption of the unconscious into our carefully ordered reality. Its sudden, terrifying appearance on a lonely road is the psychological equivalent of a suppressed truth breaking through with undeniable force. It is the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, now standing before us with burning eyes, demanding to be seen. Its very existence is a challenge to the persona, the mask we wear every day. When the Pooka plays its tricks, appending a farmer's cart or leading a hunter in circles, it mirrors how our own repressed desires and fears can sabotage our best-laid plans. This is not mere mischief. It is the shadow's way of proving that our conscious control is an illusion. The Pooka forces a confrontation with everything we have tried to bury. Its chaotic nature reflects the untamed wilderness within our own psyche, a place we often fear to visit. Why would our own mind conjure such a frightening teacher? Because integration, not suppression, is the path to wholeness. The Pooka's infamous midnight ride is a perfect metaphor for this difficult, necessary process. When the proud farmer is taken on that terrifying journey across the sky, his worldview is shattered. This is a classic example of what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming a complete, self-aware individual by acknowledging and integrating the shadow. The Pooka does not destroy the farmer, it dismantles his arrogance. It forcibly expands his perspective, showing him how small his ego-driven concerns are in the grand scheme of existence. He returns to his doorstep humbled but more whole than before. The terror of the ride was the catalyst for a profound psychological transformation. He did not conquer the Pooka, he was forced to accept its reality, and in doing so, he accepted a part of himself. The Pooka's harsh lessons are, in this light, a brutal form of therapy. It acts as an agent of self-awareness, using shock and awe to break down the walls we build between our conscious self and our unconscious depths. Its prophecies are the sudden, uncanny insights that emerge from the shadow, the painful truths we know but refuse to admit to ourselves. Its blessing of the crops at Samhain symbolizes the creative and life-giving energy that is released when we finally make peace with our own wild nature. The Pooka teaches us that we cannot have the fertile harvest of a full life without first honoring the untamed, unpredictable soil from which it grows. To face the Pooka is to embark on the most important journey any of us can take, the journey inward, to meet the wild, shape-shifting spirit we have carried all along. This raw, untamable power sets the Pooka completely apart from the rest of the Celtic fairy court. To truly understand its unique nature, we must see how it stands in stark contrast to its more famous and more predictable cousins. Take the leprechaun, for instance. This creature is almost a caricature of order and trade. He is a solitary shoemaker, obsessed with crafting a single pair of shoes, and he guards his pot of gold with a miser's glee. His entire world is defined by a contract, a bargain, a transaction. You can trick a leprechaun, you can even capture him, and he will barter for his freedom. His magic is bound by rules. The Pooka, however, recognizes no such rules. It cannot be captured, it cannot be bargained with, and it has no interest in gold. Its currency is the terror and wisdom of the wild itself. Then there is the Banshee, perhaps the most famous Irish spirit of all. Her role is singular and grim. She is a herald of death. Her mournful wail is a specific omen, heard only when a member of a particular old family is about to pass from this world. Her function is precise, a cog in the great machine of fate. The Pooka is the opposite of a cog. It is the chaotic storm that can shake the entire machine. Its appearances are not tied to a single, predictable event like a death. It might bring a prophecy of doom, yes, but it might also bring a life-saving warning, a humbling lesson, or a vital blessing upon the crops. It is not a messenger of one specific fate, but a force that interacts with the entire spectrum of life. Consider the Dullahan, the terrifying headless horseman who carries his own head under his arm. He is a figure of absolute chilling purpose. He rides only on certain nights, and when he stops before a house and calls out a name, that person dies instantly. There is no conversation, no trick, no ride across the sky. The Dullahan is death, direct and unadorned. The Pooka is not death, it is the chaotic, vibrant, and often terrifying experience of life itself. It does not simply end your story, it takes you on a journey that fundamentally changes how you live it. While other Fae beings have a specific job, a defined role in the cosmic order, the Pooka's only role is to be the wild. It is the embodiment of nature's beautiful, unpredictable, and sometimes frightening indifference. It does not serve a system, it is the system, a living reminder that the world was not made for our comfort, and that the most profound truths are often delivered by a force that refuses to be named or tamed. That wild, untamable spirit did not just haunt the lonely lanes, it seeped into the very words people spoke every day. The Pooka's name itself never truly faded into the dusty pages of folklore. It clung to life in the dialects of rural Ireland. Even today, in some parts of the country, if you hear someone mention a Pooka, they are not always talking about a mythical beast. They might be referring to a ghost, a lingering presence in an old house, or a vague, unsettling specter. The word became a catch-all term for something you cannot quite see clearly, a whisper of the otherworld that refuses to be defined. This is the creature's first and most direct linguistic legacy, its name evolving from a specific shape shifter into a general word for the unseen. But the influence runs even deeper, hidden in plain sight within a common everyday object. Consider the Irish word puisin. It means a blindfold, a simple hood used to cover the eyes. Many language scholars see a direct link between puisin and the pooka, suggesting they spring from the same ancient root, a root connected to shrouding, to obscuring, to hiding the truth from sight. This connection is profoundly revealing. What does the pooka do, if not blindfold its victims to their own reality? When it takes a traveler on its frenzied ride, the person is utterly disoriented, unable to see the world as they once knew it. The pooka places a metaphysical puisin over their eyes, forcing them to experience reality through a terrifying, unfiltered lens. It leads people blindly, not just through physical landscapes, but through emotional and spiritual ones, stripping away their illusions until they are confronted with a raw, unvarnished truth. This linguistic thread ties the creature directly to the human experience of confusion and revelation. To have a puisin put over your eyes is to be deliberately kept in the dark, but in the pooka's case, that very act of blinding is what ultimately allows for a new kind of vision to emerge. The farmer who was ridden across the sky had his pride and his narrow world stripped away. He was effectively blindfolded to his old life, so that he could truly see his place in the universe for the very first time. The language itself preserves the pooka's core function. It is the spirit that obscures your ordinary sight so that you might, just might, gain a glimpse of something far more extraordinary. So how did people live alongside such a capricious neighbor? The relationship was not one of conquest, but of careful negotiation, and a rich body of folk wisdom emerged for dealing with the pooka. The most common and practical advice was to turn an article of your clothing inside out before venturing out after dark, especially on Samhain. This simple act was believed to throw the pooka into a state of profound confusion. The creature, a master of illusion and misdirection, could not comprehend a world where the inner became the outer, where the hidden was made visible. A coat worn inside out was a puzzle it could not solve, breaking its focus and allowing the traveler to pass by unnoticed. This practice speaks to a deep understanding of the pooka's nature. You could not fight its power with force, but you could outwit it with a clever, symbolic gesture that turned its own trickery against it. Another powerful deterrent was silver. Carrying a silver coin, a button, or even a small charm was considered a potent shield. Silver has long been associated with purity and the moon in folk traditions across Europe, and it was thought to be anathema to chaotic, malevolent spirits. The mere presence of the metal was said to burn the pooka's senses, causing it to recoil and keep its distance. This was not a weapon for attacking, but a protective talisman, a way of marking a personal boundary that the wild spirit was reluctant to cross. The most important rule, however, was one of language and respect. You never spoke of the pooka lightly, and you certainly never cursed its name. To do so was to issue an invitation, a challenge that it was all too eager to accept. Instead, people used respectful euphemisms, calling it the good people or the gentry, as a way of acknowledging its power without drawing its direct and unwanted attention. This was a form of verbal appeasement, a recognition that words have weight and that naming a powerful being carelessly could summon it from the mist. And finally, we return to the most enduring practice of all, the ritual of the pooka's share. Leaving that portion of the harvest was the ultimate act of appeasement. It was a proactive offering, a gift given not out of fear alone, but out of a pragmatic understanding of reciprocity. By willingly giving the pooka its due, the community was effectively saying, "We acknowledge your power over this land, we respect your role in the cycle of growth and decay, and we ask for your forbearance in return." This transformed a potentially hostile relationship into a tense but functional symbiosis. The farmer who left the last sheaf in the field was not just avoiding a curse, he was actively participating in an ancient agreement with the wild, ensuring that the spirit's chaotic energy would be channeled into fertility rather than destruction. These methods were not superstitions in the modern, dismissive sense. They were a sophisticated cultural toolkit for survival, a way for a vulnerable, rural people to psychologically navigate a world they believed was alive with unpredictable, intelligent forces. They understood that you could not control the storm, the mist, or the pooka, but you could learn to read the signs, show the proper respect, and hope to pass through the night unharmed. That terrifying ride across the sky was far more than a simple punishment. We can see it as a brutal, unsanctioned form of shamanic initiation, a journey not just of the body, but of the soul itself. In shamanic traditions found across the world, the initiate must undergo a profound ordeal, a symbolic death and rebirth, where their spirit is torn from the comforts of the ordinary world and plunged into the chaotic, raw reality of the spirit realm. This is exactly what happens during the Pooka's ride. The traveler is forcibly separated from everything they know, their familiar landscape vanishing beneath them as they are hurled into a domain of impossible geography and breathtaking speed. The sheer terror they experience is not an accidental byproduct. It is the essential catalyst for the transformation. That fear shatters their ego, their sense of self-importance, and leaves their mind open and vulnerable to a new, more expansive understanding of existence. They are not a passenger on a joyride. They are a candidate undergoing the most intense and dangerous rite of passage imaginable, guided by a terrifying, otherworldly master. This journey can also be understood through the Celtic concept of the fetch, or co-walker, the part of the human soul that can travel independently from the physical body. The Pooka does not simply carry the person's physical form, it snatches their fetch, their essential spirit, and takes it on a wild gallop directly into the otherworld. The landscapes they cross, the mountaintops and churning seas, are not the Ireland of maps. They are the mythic geography of the spirit, a realm where the rules of time and space do not apply. The ride is a direct immersion into this hidden reality, a place where profound truths are not learned through study, but experienced through direct, terrifying contact. When the rider is finally deposited back at their doorstep, breathless and changed, it is their fetch that returns, newly imprinted with the knowledge of the otherworld. They have seen the world from the perspective of the gods and the spirits, and they can never again view their own small life in quite the same way. The farmer who saw his land as a tiny patch gained the ultimate gift of humility, a perspective that reordered his entire value system. This was not a curse, but the acquisition of a painful, essential wisdom. The Pooka, in this light, is the ultimate spirit guide, a harsh and unpredictable teacher who uses shock and awe to force a human soul to wake up, to see beyond the veil of the mundane. Its ride is a brutal curriculum, and the final exam is whether the rider can integrate that shattering new vision into their waking life. This transformation from respected spirit to demonic entity was not an accident. It was a deliberate cultural war fought in the hearts and minds of the people. As Christian monks began to write down the old oral traditions, they faced a dilemma. They could not simply erase the Pooka, a being so deeply rooted in the landscape and the folk imagination, so they did the next best thing, they rewrote its story. The powerful genius loci, the spirit of the land, was systematically recast. In the new Christian worldview, there was no room for a morally ambiguous nature deity. The universe was now a battle between divine good and satanic evil, and the old gods had to choose a side. The Pooka, with its terrifying rides and chaotic nature, was an easy candidate for demonization. It was no longer a teacher but a tempter. Its midnight journeys were no longer shamanic initiations, but a satanic parody of a holy pilgrimage meant to lead souls to damnation, not enlightenment. The creature that once blessed the crops at Samhain was now seen as a blight upon them, its spit upon the blackberries no longer a protective act, but a demonic defilement. This was not just a change in label, it was a profound devaluation of an entire way of seeing the world. The Pooka's fall from grace reflects a broader pattern seen across Europe, where the vibrant, complex spirits of the pagan world were flattened into one-dimensional villains. The wild was no longer sacred, it was sinful. The untamed parts of nature, and by extension the untamed parts of the human soul, were now territories to be conquered and sanctified, not respected and understood. The Pooka became a cautionary tale in a new kind of story, one that taught people to fear the very wilderness they had once lived in partnership with. Its enduring presence in folklore, even in this diminished form, is a testament to its original power. The Church could rename it, could demonize it, but it could not completely kill the ancient whisper of the black horse in the mist, a stubborn echo of a world that was once alive with its own wild and willful spirit. Artists have always been the secret historians of the Pooka, their brushes and chisels capturing the creature's ever-changing reputation. In the stark woodcuts of the 17th and 18th centuries, the Pooka was often rendered as a demonic beast. These images showed a horse twisted by nightmares, its eyes wide with malice, its hooves striking sparks from the ground, and its mouth frozen in a savage snarl. This was the Pooka reimagined through a lens of religious fear, a visual representation of the Church's successful campaign to paint the old wild spirit as an agent of pure evil. The artists of that time were not illustrating folklore so much as they were creating propaganda, shaping public perception to see the creature not as a teacher, but as a monster to be feared and vanquished. Yet as the centuries turned and Romanticism swept across Europe, a new vision began to emerge. Painters, captivated by the sublime power of untamed nature, started to see the Pooka differently. They painted it as a majestic black stallion, its form blending into stormy skies and misty moors. Here, the terror was still present, but it was mingled with awe. The Pooka became a symbol of the wild beauty of Ireland itself, a force that was dangerous, yes, but also breathtakingly beautiful and essential to the national soul. This artistic shift reflected a growing nostalgia for a vanishing pastoral world and a desire to reconnect with the ancient, mythic roots of the land. The creature was no longer just a demon. It was the spirit of the wilderness, a testament to nature's overwhelming power and grandeur. Today, digital artists continue this evolution, exploring the Pooka's nature with an unprecedented freedom. You can find online galleries filled with stunning depictions that lean into its ethereal, shape-shifting essence. Some artists portray it as a being woven from moonlight and shadow, a spectral form that is half horse, half swirling mist. Others imagine its transformation mid-stride, capturing the moment its equine body dissolves into a flock of ravens or its form fractures into a kaleidoscope of animal faces. These modern interpretations often emphasize its role as a psychopomp or a guide, focusing less on raw terror and more on its connection to mystery and the subconscious. The fiery eyes of old are now often depicted as wise, ancient, and deeply knowing. This contemporary view mirrors our own psychological understanding of the Pooka, seeing it not as an external monster, but as an internal archetype of our own wild, untamed psyche. The journey of the Pooka through art is a clear map of our changing relationship with the unknown, from the fear that sought to demonize it, to the romance that sought to reclaim it, to the modern introspection that seeks to understand its place within us all. Even today, the old stories find new voices. Across online forums and in quiet conversations, people still report encounters with something that defies easy explanation, something that echoes the ancient descriptions of the Pooka. A woman walking her dog near a County Clare ruin at dusk describes a sudden, profound silence, the birdsong cutting off as if a switch had been flipped. She felt an intense, primal sensation of being watched from the gorse bushes, a pressure against her skin that made the hair on her arms stand up. There was nothing there to see, only the crushing weight of an unseen presence that followed her until she hurried back to the main road. Another account comes from a man driving a lonely road in Connemara after dark. He swerved to avoid a large, black animal that darted into his headlights, but when he stopped heart-hammering, there was nothing on the road or in the ditches. The experience left him with a lingering disorientation, a sense that the landscape itself had shifted for a moment, playing a trick on his perception. These modern witnesses rarely use the word pooka, but the patterns in their stories are unmistakable. They speak of a magnificent, terrifying black horse seen galloping along a cliff edge in the moonlight, its form dissolving into the sea mist before they can fully comprehend what they are seeing. They describe a large hare that seems to observe them with an unusual intelligence before vanishing into a burrow that was not there a moment before. The common thread is a rupture in the ordinary, a fleeting moment where the rules of reality seem to bend, leaving behind a residue of awe and unease. What do these persistent modern experiences truly mean? They suggest that the pooka is far more than a forgotten folktale. It has evolved into a powerful psychological archetype, a ready-made pattern in the human mind for processing the inexplicable. When someone feels that sudden, uncanny dread on a lonely path, or glimpses a shape in the periphery that should not be there, the ancient template of the shape-shifting trickster provides a vessel for that fear and wonder. These encounters are not necessarily proof of a literal creature, but they are undeniable proof of the pooka's enduring power as a symbol. It remains the name we give to the wild, untamed mystery that still lingers in the landscape's forgotten corners, a testament to our deep, subconscious need for a world that still holds secrets older and wiser than ourselves. This shape-shifting spirit of the Irish landscape is far from alone in the world's folklore. Look to the frozen north, and you will find Loki, the Norse god of mischief, whose clever deceptions and chaotic schemes often unravel the order of the gods, leading to unexpected consequences and ultimately to their rebirth after Ragnarok. Journey to the stories of West Africa and the Caribbean, and you will meet Anansi, the spider, a being who uses his wit and guile to outsmart creatures far larger and stronger than himself, often bringing vital knowledge, like stories themselves, to humanity. Cross the ocean to the traditions of many Native American peoples, and there is Coyote, a creature of immense appetites and foolish pride, whose blunders and tricks explain the origins of death and the placement of the stars, teaching hard lessons about the world through his own failures. Each of these figures, from Loki to Anansi to Coyote, operates as a classic trickster archetype. They are boundary crossers, entities that thrive in the spaces between order and chaos, sacred and profane, the established rules and the wild unknown. They do not respect the walls we build around our societies or our sense of reality. Their primary function is to disrupt, to challenge the status quo, and in doing so, they force change. The pooka fits perfectly within this global family. Its terrifying midnight rides are a direct parallel to Loki's schemes that upend Asgard, both serving as a violent shock to the system that shatters complacency. Its habit of leading arrogant hunters on a futile chase mirrors Anansi's clever deceptions, proving that intelligence can triumph over brute force, and its role in spoiling the blackberries, much like Coyote's blunders, creates a new, necessary rule for the community to live by. These tricksters are not merely agents of random mischief. They are the essential catalysts of evolution in mythology, the chaotic spark that prevents the world from becoming stagnant and rigid. They remind us that too much order leads to brittleness, and that a certain amount of chaos is not just inevitable, but vital for growth, adaptation, and the emergence of new wisdom. The pooka, in its own uniquely Irish way, is this same necessary disruptor, a local expression of a universal force that whispers a crucial truth. Sometimes the most profound growth begins with a shattering of everything you thought you knew. We can hear its ancient voice in the crack of a melting glacier, the pooka's legendary defiance against human order, finds a chilling new resonance in our current ecological crisis. That farmer whose field was trampled was not just the victim of a random prank. He was receiving a folkloric reprimand for overstepping a boundary. The creature's chaotic disruptions served as a natural check and balance, a way for the wild to assert its sovereignty when human ambition grew too greedy. Today, we see the same principle playing out on a global scale. The pooka's destructive tendencies were never about mindless anarchy. They were a powerful, symbolic language warning against the consequences of a fractured relationship with the land. When we pave over wetlands to build shopping centers, we are the arrogant farmer taking every last grain and leaving no share. The resulting floods that damage nearby towns are the pooka's hoofprints, a forceful and devastating reclamation. When industrial pollution chokes a river, the toxic algae blooms and the dead fish washing ashore are its grotesque, hairy visage appearing to deliver a terrible prophecy. The message is the same now as it was then. The land will not be endlessly exploited without a response. This reinterpretation casts the pooka not as a monster, but as an ecological prophet. Its shape-shifting nature reflects the myriad forms our environmental reckoning takes, from a superstorm in the shape of a horse to a pandemic that moves with the silent, pervasive spread of a mist. The creature's ancient role was to maintain balance, and in a world of climate change and mass extinction, its mythos becomes a stark allegory for nature's retaliatory power. The pooka did not hate humanity. It enforced a necessary reciprocity. Its modern equivalent is the undeniable feedback loop we now face, where our own actions are mirrored back to us in the form of escalating natural disasters. To honor the pooka today is to finally learn its oldest lesson, that we are not separate from the wild, but deeply, irrevocably dependent upon it. Our survival hinges on remembering the share we must leave, on listening for the warning in the wind before it becomes a roar. Yet our minds are powerful creators, capable of weaving shadows into solid form. A skeptic might ask if every pooka sighting was truly a brush with the supernatural, or simply a case of mistaken identity under the veil of night. Imagine a lone traveler, weary and lost on a winding country lane. The moon is a sliver, the wind whispers through the gorse, and a dark shape moves in the periphery. What appears as a monstrous black horse with eyes of fire could, in the stark light of day, be a stray stallion, its coat made jet black by the gloom, the reflection of a distant lantern caught in its wide, startled eyes. That great eagle soaring with an ancient intelligence might be a particularly large and majestic bird of prey, its flight patterns misunderstood by an observer already steeped in local lore. Even the grotesque, hairy man could be a badger standing on its hind legs, its silhouette distorted by mist and a fearful imagination. Folklore often emerges from the human need to explain the unexplainable. Before modern science could detail the habits of nocturnal animals or the physics of weather, communities crafted stories to make sense of the strange sounds in the forest or the sudden damage to a crop. The pooka provided a compelling, character-driven reason for events that felt random and chaotic. It gave a face to the fear of the dark and a name to the unpredictable nature of the wild. This psychological dimension extends to more personal experiences. The terrifying sensation of being pinned down during a midnight ride, unable to move or scream as a shadowy presence looms, bears a striking resemblance to the modern understanding of sleep paralysis. In this state, the dreaming brain and waking consciousness collide, often generating vivid, tactile hallucinations of malevolent entities. In a time before this was a documented medical phenomenon, what else could such a visceral, shared terror be but a visit from the pooka? Even shared supernatural experiences, where multiple people claim to witness the same apparition, might find an explanation in social phenomena like folie à deux, a shared delusion where the intense belief of one person can influence the perceptions of another, especially within a close-knit family or community. This is not to dismantle the magic, but to understand its source, The enduring power of the Pooka may lie not in its literal existence as a shape-shifting creature, but in its profound role as a narrative vessel for our deepest anxieties about the unknown, giving tangible form to the formless fears that have always walked alongside us in the dark. The Pooka endures because it gives a name to a force we all feel but cannot control. This shape-shifting trickster is more than a ghost story. It is a timeless symbol of pure, untamable freedom. In a world that constantly demands we follow rules, meet deadlines, and conform to expectations, the Pooka represents the part of us that screams for release. It is the sudden, wild impulse to run into a storm, the chaotic thought that disrupts a tedious routine, the creative spark that defies all logical planning. The Pooka is that inner rebellion made manifest, a creature that lives by its own whims and acknowledges no master. Its appeal lies in this glorious, terrifying refusal to be domesticated. We watch from our structured lives as it gallops across the night sky, and a secret part of our soul gallops right alongside it. This is not just about a monster in the mist, it is about the wildness we have locked away inside ourselves. The Pooka is the ultimate nonconformist, a being of such raw authenticity that it challenges the very idea of control. It reminds us that chaos is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is the very source of life and creativity, the necessary storm that clears the air for something new to grow. When the Pooka tramples a farmer's field, it is not mere vandalism, it is a violent act of rewilding, a statement that the land's wild heart cannot be entirely plowed under. When it takes a proud man on a terrifying ride, it is shattering the rigid cage of his ego. We are fascinated because we secretly long for that kind of liberation, for a force powerful enough to break the invisible fences we have built around our own lives. The Pooka embodies the beautiful, dangerous truth that not everything can or should be managed, predicted, or sanitized. It is the spirit of the unexpected, the champion of the unscripted moment, the wild card in a universe that often feels preordained. This is why its stories have traveled from ancient campfires to modern digital screens. The context changes, but the core yearning remains the same. We need the Pooka. We need to believe that somewhere, just beyond the edge of the streetlights, something ancient and free still runs, reminding us that a part of our own soul refuses to be tamed. So the Pooka remains not as a simple monster to be feared or a fairy to be catalogued, but as a profound and complex embodiment of the land itself. It is the shape-shifting soul of the Irish wilderness, a trickster whose true purpose was to teach a deep and abiding respect for the wild. Its stories are not just entertainments, they are ancient lessons carved into the very hills, warning us that every action has a consequence, and that nature's balance is a force to be honored, not conquered. The Pooka is that thrilling and terrifying unknown, the whisper in the hedgerow that reminds us the world is still alive with mystery. It challenges us to look inward, to acknowledge the wild, untamed spirit we all carry within, and to consider what we have sacrificed in our quest for total control. This creature is a mirror, reflecting our own relationship with chaos, freedom, and the untamable parts of existence. We would love to hear from you. Do you have any family stories about the Pooka, or perhaps a different trickster spirit from your own heritage? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if you are drawn to these journeys into the hidden corners of esoteric spirituality and occult practices, be sure to subscribe for our next exploration into the world's deepest mysteries.